Welcome everybody, I'm Santiago Kneeland and this is The Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. So in today's topic, we're going to talk about the time is now. What is this time? What is here? Why is this world ready for a new revelation, for a new, let's say, more information about God? So today we're going to be talking about something that's happening all over the different media and across the world, is that after decades of quiet growth, the teachings of the Urantia Book are beginning to emerge into open conversation through podcasts, videos, social media, and everyday seekers asking deeper questions about life, God, and our place in the universe. Joining me today is Don Clementin, a longtime student of the Urantia Book and collaborator in projects bringing these teachings to new audiences. Together, we're exploring why this moment matters, what this book uniquely offers, and why so many people are discovering that the time to explore these ideas might just be now. So welcome, Don. It's a pleasure having you here once more.
Glad. I'm happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to this very vital subject.
Awesome. So to start us off, we're going to talk about the shift. Something's happening. Something is shifting in the spiritual landscape. Around the world, people are stepping away from rigid institutions and inherited beliefs and beginning to explore their spiritual lives from themselves. At the same time, the Urantia Book, once quietly studied by a small circles of readers, is suddenly appearing everywhere. YouTube channels, podcasts, new creative projects, and voices willing to speak openly about its ideas and ideals. In this first segment, Don and I will talk about the growing wave of curiosity, what we're witnessing firsthand, and what feels like a moment of awakening for a new generation of spiritual leaders. So, Don, we've been talking about this, and that's why we came to this topic. What can you tell us about this moment and why the time is now?
Well, the time seems to be very propitious, primarily because there's been a shift in the way people think about spirituality. For decades, even centuries, organized religion kind of had a grip, a stronghold grip on the mentality and thinking of religious people. And moving outside of those parameters could label you as a heretic or get you disassociated from a group. Uh, there was no really open way to discuss questions that you might have about the spiritual life. But over the last few years, that has shifted dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
People are no longer satisfied with the traditions that have been handed down. Of course, there is a large segment of the population that are, but many people are now coming out and loudly asking the questions that for a long time they only secretly uttered within. Also, there's been a number of discoveries that have been made in all fields of knowledge that has opened up our minds to factual information that had been buried for quite a while. And because of that, now people are more open to listen to alternative voices and look at ideas that were once considered off the table for discussion. Uh, and then there's another big thing that has happened, and that is the loss of confidence in many of our spiritual leaders. Um, they, in many areas, it's been found that there has been a certain level of hiding who they really are. And once their true personality and background is exposed, it has crushed many people's confidence in the voices that were once held as the stable and insightful places that we could look for counsel and guidance. So all of these things together, put together, has made a giant shift in the way people thinking or have been thinking. And I think that that has opened up a corridor for the Urantia book to be considered in a whole new light now.
This is interesting, and I like what you're bringing, Don. And I mean, you brought a lot of information. Let me go one by one, but first of all, I mean, before I think we tell our personal stories, because I think we have similar stories that where we come from, institutional religions, from very rigid structures, like you said, uh, institutions that had a grip on faith, and everything had to be through them, and not to diminish them, and I think in my case it was my foundations. I think of what I knew about God in that at that moment, but eventually I grew out of them. One of the things that especially me growing as Catholic, what happened is when you're a kid, you start to see the Trinity and the Virgin Mary and this and that, and everything that you can't explain. It's a mystery. And that was a very simple way of getting through things. But as you age, as you become of age and you grow older, and when I it definitely was in my teens, and ultimately when early 20s, or even at 18, I realized that a lot of things that didn't make sense. So that's when I started my path, found the Urantia book. But definitely, I think a lot of it had to be, I had to break from those rigid structures, from those fear-based restrictions. And one of the other things that I want you to tell us your story, and I also want you to tell us about. I mean, you mentioned, the loss in faith in our spiritual leaders, and not only the institutions. I think everybody can say, yeah, I don't go to church or institutional religion, but also the gurus and the masters and this and that. I mean, a lot of these phony or disingenuous people that are coming out, and people are not, they're looking for ways of who do I follow, what do I do, who's going to teach me about God. This is, by the way, not telling us that here you're going to find the answers. No, the answers are in you, and this is one of the premises about this book, that you have a divine within. That's what the reason of this podcast. You have a divine spark within, and in it is everything for you to for your spiritual progress. Of course, you're going to find different tools, and you're going to be touching on different religions, different practices, and everything that are going to enhance even people, that understanding and that relationship with God. But eventually, the reins are yours, and it's all inside of you. So give us, your take on that, and tell us a bit of your story.
I don't want to give people the impression that religion or organized religion is somehow all bad. That's certainly not the case. It's done a lot in getting us to where we are today. Even with its flaws, there has been a lot of beauties and sustaining qualities about organized religion that has carried us this far. Um, so let's not diminish that. However, there are many unanswered questions that we all have that have nagged us. And for me, rather than focusing on the inadequacies of religion, I would like to encourage people just to become more open to finding out the answers to questions that has always plagued them. And once I found the strength within, or the courage, to begin to ask those questions, and then to be open enough to look for answers that weren't the ones that I had been given all of my life, then it was like a door that became unlocked. And so, like you said earlier, the consideration of the Urantia book is not meant to replace your faith or even your religion, but to expand upon the knowledge base that you already have. And once I found the courage to do that, I felt like I hit the mother lode.
Yeah.
And it's been one beautiful exploration of life, one a beautiful experience after another. And so there's there's no fear in doing this. And I think that the idea behind our podcast here is to help people to see that there is information out there that can be considered that's very valuable and not to be afraid of it.
Before we go into the list, I mean, what happened personally for you? And, what were those things that shifted? In my case personally, I believe I didn't have fear anymore. I lost fear in many things. Fear, and I lost fear in death, fear of the unknown, and a lot of the explanations that it gave me for many of the doubts that I had, many of the unanswered mysteries, that I was presented in the Catholic Church. And I remember the whole, the whole point of it was that you're not supposed to know it. But imagine that these mysteries are solved. And I think that anybody that knows about these mysteries, if they are really solved, and I truly believe, the explanation that I get, I really take it. I mean, it's crystal clear of how it says and what it explains. So I think that's one of the things that I like about the book, the practical and straightforward. It's not in verse. It's not, you have to interpret. No, no, no. It's straightforward, a narrative. I don't know. What's your take on this, Don?
So this is the challenge for me in talking about the Urantia book. The challenge is that I don't want listeners to come here and feel that this is the book that answers all your questions. And based on my personal experience, I'm recommending to you to do this. What I want them to see is that there are great possibilities to understand things that you've asked and that have never been answered. And I'll give you an
That's a good way.
example. Let me just give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Bible tells us God is love. 1 John 4:8. Beautiful teaching. And most people, Christian or not, accept that. But what does that mean? That is so narrow. What if we were able to find a source that gives us much more about the universal Father, his nature, some aspects of his deity, how he relates to other heavenly entities, how he relates to us personally? Now, we have examples of how God deals with people in the Old Testament of the Bible, and other religious traditions do also. But the Urantia book gives such a comprehensive portrait of the universal Father and deity in so much detail. I've never read anything about God in this way in my life. As a matter of fact, as a personal experience, I'll relate this to you.
Mm-hmm.
After I had read that information about the universal Father and then how he relates to mankind, uh, for a while, I was not able to pray anymore.
Okay.
What happened was the God of the Old Testament, I could wrap my head around him because it talks about him getting angry and wanting to kill a bunch of people, or telling Moses, stand aside while I wipe them out and I'll make a new nation out of you. See, all of those human characteristics about God, I could wrap my head around that.
That's
So there's
easy.
no big mystery there.
Yeah.
But when I read this aspect of God as portrayed in the Urantia book, all of a sudden I said, he's too big for me. This is way too big for me. How can he even notice me? Because it showed the grandeur of deity in a way that I had never, ever contemplated or even read about. So I shared this experience with one of my friends who had introduced me to the Urantia book.
Okay.
And what he told me, he says, that's exactly why we need Jesus.
Okay.
because he was able to put the universal Father by example
Mm-hmm.
in terms that our mortal finite mind could understand.
I love this.
And
Can,
that's,
can you can you repeat it, Don, please?
yes, Jesus was able to put the concepts of the universal Father in both word and personal life action, demonstrate and display that in such a way that we could get it, that a mortal mind could get it. Now, the Father will grow exponentially as we move on past this life and we gain greater spiritual capacity. But for a human, with our limited perspective, because of being mortal, we can only go so far.
Exactly.
And Jesus brought that great, enormous concept of deity. He explained it and then through his life displayed the character of God in ways that we can relate to. And as a result of that, it enhanced my appreciation and understanding of Jesus, his life and teachings in a way that the four gospel accounts, while good, never gave me that glimpse into God.
Exactly.
So
I
this is
like
what
that also.
happens. It fills in these large gaps that we have in our understanding.
The way you just put it, I think is very to the point and very practical. Here we're understanding this super finite, incomprehensible a concept. And that's the thing. We live in the universes of time and space. God, the first source and center, lives in paradise, in the central universe, which is perfect. So we do not understand how that works. So that's I think I understand the awe you talk about, because it happened to me as well. It's okay. Yes, I can't pretend to understand that because it's beyond comprehension, but the through Jesus, as you say, and as he said it, we can understand this infinity, this a super concept, well, not super concept, but super reality that we exist in. So I really like what you said, and basically what Jesus did is bring it in our language, and we become it. I mean, not only bring it in our language and present it, but live it and become flesh and live this experience and teach us as a father, basically.
I don't want to jump ahead of your schedule, but here's another thing I can add,
Mm-hmm.
and that is this. Is one of the aspects that tells us why the Urantia Book deserves a seat at the table of serious
Mm-hmm.
spiritual, religious, and scientific inquiry, because it goes into those areas that a lot of other books just don't delve into to the extent that it does. In other words, it doesn't cover a topic fragmentally. It does a deep dive into everything. And so
Yeah.
we come away with a comprehensive understanding of any particular topic it touches on. And that's
Definitely.
quite valuable because when you're able to put things into context with the things you already know, that fills out a fuller picture of what we're trying to understand. At the beginning of this, you mentioned how people are becoming more open to looking
Mm-hmm.
at new things. And at one time, we know that the Urantia Book was considered to be on the fringe. And, well, think about that. The Dead Sea Scrolls were one time thought to be on the fringe until they weren't. Over time, they gathered and got recognized as legitimate and a very good documentation of events that took place centuries ago. The same with the Nag Hammadi Library was one time thought to be fringe. But the question is this, or we could often think that fringe is often where the frontier is. Something
I like
starts
that.
on the fringe, and then it becomes the frontier for where we move to next. And that's what I like to think of the Urantia book as being on the frontier of a new
On the
paradigm.
frontier. A frontier, definitely in the frontier of a new paradigm, and I like the way that you put it, Don. And I think, I mean, let's dive into. I mean, you were talking about the different things that it brings, and not just let's say a religious book, quote unquote, because you can't categorize it just as a religious book because it does touch on an explanation of deity, but it also touches on history. It touches on you said there's many chapters or many pages documents, and like you said, God's relationship to the individual, to the human being. I mean, that's it's not just telling you about God, but of that relationship with you. And throughout the book, there's even one, I like section 3, which is really good and teaches you a lot of the practical things of life. Uh, Marriage, social institutions. So it's really, really good. So closing the segment with this, we will dive now into those topics. Now that we've talked about this shift happening in the world and that, the different formats, there's even, different initiatives right now of doing, major productions that are bringing these stories to not only the internet, but to mainstream media. So I think this is very interesting. But now that we talked about this shift in the world, the natural question becomes, what exactly is drawing people to the Urantia Book? What is it in there? In this segment, we open the door and take a look inside. From a vast map of the spiritual universe to a deeper understanding of events like the Lucifer Rebellion and even what happens after death, the book presents ideas that are bold, detailed, and deeply thought-provoking. We're not here to explain everything, just to show you what's on the table and spark the curiosity that might lead you to explore this for yourself. Let's start from the beginning. Right now, a very in vogue topic is disclosure. Everything is disclosure. We're getting these images about aliens and about all this information. But to our account, the disclosure has been here since 1955. So what can you tell us about this disclosure?
Okay, so this is a good example of the value of the Urantia book. As you mentioned, everyone is talking about disclosure right now. And what do we mean by disclosure? It's the idea that the governments have been sitting on information about non human intelligence, about contact with them, about their craft, and about beings that simply aren't from here. But here's what I keep thinking about, and that is the most comprehensive disclosure of non-human intelligence ever made to the human race happened quietly in 1955 in Chicago. There was no congressional hearing and no press conference, just a book. Now let that sink in for a minute. What the Urantia book tells us is it gives us a comprehensive view of celestial intelligences outside of the earth, within our cosmos, and an abundant number of personalities that function here on our planet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most people accept that there are these celestial personalities. The Bible speaks very meagerly about some of them. We have a mention of seraphim and angels. Lucifer has been mentioned. The devil has been mentioned, but that is just very small.
It's putting
number of
everything in
entities.
one identity.
Yeah, and they're just very small. The Urantia book opens us up to the names of these celestial personalities, their roles, their ranks, what their relationship is to the wider universal government, what their relationship is to planet Earth, and what their relationship is to individual mortals. So when people talk about disclosure, what are they really asking for? They really want to know, are we alone? Is there intelligence beyond what we can see? Is somebody aware of us? Does our existence matter in the larger context? Those are the real questions underneath all of these hearings and inquiries that are taking place. The craft and the cover ups are almost secondary. The real hunger is cosmological. We want to know our place in something larger than what we are. And the Urantia book answers every single one of those questions in details with names, roles, functions, and relationships. So, without having to even go into a deep dive about any of that, if those questions interest you, if you've always wondered about them, then this is a place to begin an investigation. That's one of the things.
No, definitely. I mean, to one of the things that happened to me, and as I got, when I turned 18, started going and asking a lot of questions, and I always mention this that and one time I was in mass in church, and I realized that a lot of people went there not to get closer to God, but to get away from the devil, and I wanted to get close to God, so I went into that, that discovery, and this information, as you said, the rank, the type of being, the relationship we have with them, and what really strikes me, and really, the novelty that this, like you're saying, this disclosure of understanding who we are, if we're alone, number one, we're not alone, uh, where we are, and what is our function, in what capacity do we serve, and do we, work in this universal harmony. I think that's very important because it gives us meaning. I think that's really fundamental in what happened to me. This disclosure, this understanding of how everything works and how we relate to these different beings, and the different levels and the different parts of the universe. Like we were saying, the central universe, which is perfect, if we can fathom that, and these super universes who are, we're in time and space, and time and space, especially time, gives us that possibility to be, come from a material, imperfect, reality, and evolve through our hard work and our, our progressive evolution, into that, eventually becoming one with the Supreme. And that concept, which is another thing I like about the Urantia book, the concept of the Supreme, how everything is working together, and we're all eventually, we're actualizing, or we're creating this God the Supreme, this concept. I don't know if we'll have time to talk about this. I think this is a whole a podcast episode to talk about, the Supreme. But that's what I like, this position in our place in the universe.
So, yes. So there's one other thing about disclosure I want to mention,
Mm-hmm.
and it's perhaps the most astonishing disclosure isn't about beings who are outside of us. It's about the being within us.
Mm-hmm.
And the Urantia book describes a fragment of God, not in a metaphorical sense, but an actual presence that takes up residence in the mind at the moment that we make our first genuine moral choice as a child. And this most significant non human intelligence is in contact with each of us as individuals. It's not in a government vault somewhere,
Mm-mm.
it's within us. Now, the Bible has talked about we all have God's Spirit with us, within us, and so forth. but never have we been given such a precise and detailed description of this fragment of God that has been bestowed upon every individual, moral thinking individual of mankind. That's an amazing disclosure.
Yeah.
And most of us die without ever realizing the potential that we have within us by co-partnering with
Exactly.
this entity of God. See, so that in and of itself
Yeah.
has major value and implications for every one of us. Let's move on to another aspect of the Urantia Book that makes it deserving of our attention. And that has to do with Jesus himself. Scholars have been trying to unravel and figure out from the fragmented pieces of history, everything that they could grab onto, of what Jesus was doing during those missing years. He is, without question in my mind, the most important individual that has ever walked this planet. And yet we only have approximately 3.5 years of history on him, and that is during his ministry with the apostles, the last 3.5 years of his life. But what happened between the age of 12, which the Bible mentions, when he was in the temple, and the age of 30? There's 18 years of missing information about the most important individual that has ever walked the planet. The Urantia Book provides a detailed description of his life every single year. Okay? Now, this is the beauty about that portrayal. When you read through it, you get no sense that this is mythological. It sounds like a biographical documentary of the life of an individual.
Yeah.
And as you're reading through it, so many pieces of the puzzle begin to fall in place about how Jesus knows the struggles of humanity, how he knows us as an individual, because we're seeing aspects of his humanity that has never been revealed to the world before.
Definitely.
And I grew up as a Christian reading the Bible all of my life, reading the Gospels over and over many times, even teaching and lecturing on the Gospel accounts. And I'll tell you, when I read this account of Jesus' life from birth all the way up through the beginning of his ministry with the apostles, it opened, I can understand now
Yeah. I
why
can relate.
people fell in love with this man
Yeah.
and why he deserves so much of our attention and our love and our devotion and our allegiance because of the beautiful person that he is and what he became after his resurrection. I've never read anything like this. I've read accounts of what he did in the past through other writings, which seemed kind of mythical and somewhat silly at times, like him performing crazy miracles as a teenager. It just never resonated with me. But this historical way that the master's life is portrayed here is like something you will find nowhere else on this planet. So if you want to know more about Jesus and you're hungering for something else, here's an opportunity for you to do a deeper dive into a place that will leave you with no questions to ask. It covers the Alpha and Omega of Jesus'
Exactly.
earthly life.
It does, and that's really important, Don. I think this account, as you're saying, if we only know the 3 years of his public ministry, okay, the execution of this ministry, but how did we get there? In any story, you have to have a three acts. And it tells you so much about his relationships, the perils and the struggles, and the humanity, basically, of Jesus, not only the divinity, and the other day I had a podcast with Diane Lebrecq, and we were talking about 'cause she has the like in eras, and he said we had to first find the glorified Jesus. We had to know about that, and what's happening right now, why the time is now, is that we're finding the human Jesus, which we, from reading the Urantia book, know that is very important, because that's our entry point in relating with him. That's where we really see that he came, and that's you understand why he came. And let me just point this out. And one of the things that did not really, and it did not make sense to me, is that why, if God is all loving, as Jesus presented him, did he send you to die? And it was his will, to rid our sins with your blood. Why? I don't get it. And why are we, we're not going to get into that, but that was one of the main things that did not check with me. But when I understood in the Urantia book what it says about Jesus and the missions of bestowal, of living in these creatures, in these beings that we talked about, in the disclosure, understanding them, living their lives, and being able to judge them, and to be, in the end, get his full authority and full sovereignty on his the domains that he is in charge of. Let's say, if we want to, we can explain it in a way. So that made a lot of sense to me, and it wasn't although there is a lot of lessons in the cross, and about the always respecting the will of your creatures. I think that was the main a lesson there for us to take. And the struggles, we all have that cross to bear. Even Jesus, even an incarnated deity, had to go through these struggles, but he went through them. And what a great example! That's what I take from the cross. What a great example of going through these struggles and taking this with you. So, think, like you said, it is the portrayal of Jesus is beyond what we've ever seen.
Yeah, and then let's take another thing that is very fascinating. This was something that was very uh, interesting to me and of interest to me, and that is why our world is in such dire straits. The Bible tells us about the book of Genesis, about it. It has its description of the fall of man. Okay, the book of Job gives us a little glimpse into heaven, where it speaks of the sons of God gathering before the throne, and one of these angels makes a challenge to God. But we have these fragments. The book of Ezekiel speaks of Lucifer, okay? But there's pieces and fragments here. The Urantia book gives us the full picture of what happened, and it describes the problem of evil and what's known as the Lucifer rebellion. The Bible tells us that there was a fallen angel that fell due to pride, and this caused war in heaven, which is described in the book of Revelation. But the Urantia book gives us the fully articulated administrative crisis that took place when Lucifer had his declaration of liberty. And it describes that declaration of liberty in detail. It tells us that that adjudication is still in process, and that as a result of that, our world has been quarantined. We're not part of the overall celestial circuits that exist between non-rebellion planets. So once you have that description, this begins to contextualize human suffering in a way that other religious texts have not quite managed to do. And it doesn't solve the problem of evil philosophically as much as it helps us to see how it operates cosmically and how it will be eventually settled. So when you have that behind the scenes picture of a very expansive and detailed picture of what happened, wow, does that bring so much of our present day problems into focus and why they exist.
Yeah.
So you want a detailed explanation of what the Bible only hints at fragmentally? This will give you the whole picture.
Yeah. It gives you all the different personalities of the rebellion, and one of the things that I really like about this part is the Lucifer Manifesto. You know what it says there. You know, it's like any declaration. I mean, we have the Declaration of Independence. It states there the reasons, the why they're. You know, it's a it tells you why this is happening, and it gives your position or what your views, tells you why it's not following, and then the conclusion. And that's Lucifer Manifesto. It paints it in a very practical way that you understand his thinking and why people fell into that. And it's interesting, because you know, thinking about it, not only recently, but it does have to do a lot of the same characteristics as what, the free and false liberties that we see today, happening, and that clash. And I see that's one of the other reasons why this is, the Urantia Book is taking, more front and more focus, because this is happening. It's this manifesto and these false liberties are there, and we're not only losing faith in our religions, or institutional religions and gurus, but we're also losing faith in our governments and in our institutions. And we now understand, or we're turning to understand, that if we do not have God in our centerfold, in our everyday lives, and live for Him, and we just serve false gods, we get into this situation that we get into. Here we're going to continue exploring some of the most powerful ideas in the Urantia Book and why it brings them forward. From a deeper understanding of the nature of God to the untold early life of Jesus we're seeing, to the path that encourages questioning rather than blind beliefs. Perhaps most importantly, this is a message offered without fear, dogma, or pressure. It's simply an invitation to explore, to question, and to discover truth for yourself. The table is open and the conversation continues. So, Don, you were telling us about this last in our last segment, one of the aspects that it brings to the table that's really interesting, and I think people are going to really like.
Yeah, it has to do with what happens after death.
Yes.
And this is very, very well detailed in the Urantia Book. Nearly every religious tradition hints at survival after death, but the mechanics are vague. Paul had that cryptic reference in 1 Corinthians 15:44 to us getting a spiritual body after we die. But what actually happens? The Urantia Book gives us a detailed explanation of, first of all, what is a human?
Mm-hmm.
What are all the components that make us up? We have a soul, we have mind, we have volition, we have a physical body, and we have what's known as that pilot light that indicates that we are alive. We have the father fragment, we have a soul. Okay, so when we die, the Urantia Book gives us the very most minute details of what literally happens the moment you die, when the breath of life leaves you, and that spark that is in the body that indicates you have life is gone.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to go into all the details because I want you to enjoy this as you're reading through it. But I'll tell you this. It tells us every step of what is happening while we are laying in that unconscious state until we are repersonalized on the mansion worlds that Jesus talked about. Remember, he said, "In the house of my Father,
Yeah.
there are many abodes." Well, these are the mansion worlds that he was talking about. So we have the details of what happens during that period of initial unconsciousness, what's going on in the celestial atmosphere
Mm-hmm.
while we're waiting to be repersonalized. What happens as soon as we open our eyes in this repersonalized state? What kind of body do we have? What does our environment look like? What will we see when we first open our eyes? Who will we encounter? Where will they take us? And how does life begin for us in these new bodies? In
Mm-hmm.
detail. There is no other religious work or writing that can provide such a detailed map of what happens from mortal life transitioning into what is known as the Urantia life,
That's what I
which
was
is the
going to
next,
ask you.
which is the
That's
next,
yeah.
yeah, which is the next stage of existence for mortals after they are repersonalized or resurrected and then working towards becoming a true spirit. So all of these details are there. I mean, what kind of a mind would you need in order to write something like this?
Yeah.
I mean, once you began to delve into this, for me, I could immediately see this is something that is beyond human intelligence because the insights and the descriptions that are given are beyond our ability to know.
And the way that it's presented, Don, and this is something that really struck me, and the way that I got introduced into with the Urantia book is somebody read a quote, and for me it was so truthful, so commanding, so loving. It had all the elements. It was so balanced and so perfect that I knew that this wasn't human. And speaking about this, I think, and especially this topic, you personally, I think, found a lot of comfort in this topic, in the life after death topic, in your personal life. When you understood this. So, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, yes. Prior to reading about this, I had I would say, a fear of death.
Hmm.
And I was on this path of health and nutrition to extend my life as long and as far as I could to avoid having to meet with that eventuality. After I read about the life that awaits us after this life, it was like, I can't wait to get out of here. Honestly,
Yeah.
I cannot wait to get out of here. And all of a sudden, it seemed like my life started slowing down,
Okay.
trying to keep me further away from reaching that beautiful repersonalization journey. I totally overcame the fear of death because
This
what
is
happened
significant.
inside of me was a true realization that this is real. This was not illusory to me. And then what followed upon that was another uh, insight that happened. Um, I would say probably about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years. I came to the conclusion that as a mortal, this is the only time I will be able to experience what it is like to be a human. This will never be repeated. The opportunity to try and attain the highest level of human life, of trying to live as high a level, as close to the level of Jesus as is attainable for a mortal, and to try and really get the most beautiful experiences I can out of this mortal life. Because after it is over, that's it.
Yeah,
Life beyond this is going to be, by an order of magnitude, way more fulfilling, more wonderful, with a greater absence of pain and misery. But this life that we have now is a foundation for springing into the next life. And you don't want to leave this life without having fully experienced what it is to be a human. So
I love
while
this. Yeah.
while I deeply appreciate the future life, learning about this has helped me to understand and value my present life even more than I ever have.
This is really good, Don. I like it. That's why I always end this podcast with carpe diem. Carpe diem is seize the day. I mean, go and do whatever. I mean, what's in your hands and your capabilities and your possibilities to be the best version of yourself. You know, and I take it to very simple explanation. You know, I mean, energy just is a positive and negative or neutral charge. You know, it's okay. I mean, you can be a neutral. Yeah. I mean, the idea is not to be a negative, but if you can be something positive, you can bring that positive energy, that positive acumen. You know, it's not just energy; it's in the service, it's in the work. That's why it's in the verb, it's in the doing. You know, if you bring this and you really live every day, like you're saying, trying to become the best version of that human self, because it's the only life that you're going to have truly. It's the only life that you're going to have as a human. You're going to have a very long and fruitful and interesting life afterwards. But I mean, what else can you take from this life? This is something that's really good, Don. And thanks for putting this into perspective. I think a lot, our audience and anybody that's reading, watching this is going to take a lot from this. So I think it's also important to point out. You know, we mentioned it a little bit in the first segment. You know, the nature of God. You know, I think it's important that we go beyond the primitive concept. You know, just and really understanding the dimension of God and how I like this. You know how he distributes himself. You know, he has to be like in this person. You know, the center. He's the gravity of everything, of matter, of spirit, of everything. You know, everything stems from there. But the way that he lives the universe and the way that's why the universe exists is because he wanted to experience this, you know, grandeur, or not grandeur, but this you know, realization of his son. So I think this is a very interesting concept of the father and his children, and the way that we understood it, or that was primitively presented, and the way that the Urantia book presents it.
So that's why I think that there's so many venues now that are openly talking about it. It's been quiet. The Urantia book has quietly been gathering readers from diverse parts of the world, cultures, languages, and so forth. They are collaborating with each other, and now they're finding uh, various vehicles to share this revelation with as many people as possible. So if any of these topics that we have been talking about has, you know, caused an individual to question it, even the slightest bit, this is worth your investigation. It is. I think you will be rewarded beyond what you ever anticipated you could get. And if for no other reason, in order for us to understand and grow our mindset and thinking, we have to stretch it beyond what we have already read, studied, and conceived of. We need something larger and bigger than what we already have. And this provides that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would like to encourage everyone, as soon as the podcast is over, to make an effort to dive into this, to acquire yourself a copy of this. Go through the table of contents. You will find a plethora of topics that will just give you an example. When I was first introduced to this, because I had some questions that I put to my ministry partners, and by the time they had let me know about this, they said, this will answer all of the questions that you've ever had and some that you have never even thought to ask. And
Exactly.
I found that to be so. I've never felt so stabilized in living in this world because, as you know, right now our planet is in the midst of some epochal changes that everyone is acknowledging is
Yeah.
very different from any past time in history. And for many of us, even as the Urantia Book acknowledges, it's been unsettling, it's been disorienting. People are fearful, they're anxious, they're afraid of the future. We're hearing of what AI could possibly do to the future of work and all those institutions that we look to for stability. So where do we get the mental and psychological wherewithal to get through with this
Yeah.
and maintain a level of tranquility and peace and comfort? Well, if we can understand that we're not alone, that this world is not on its own wayward trajectory into whatever happens, and that we're thrown against the wall by whatever force may be at play, when we understand that we are divinely watched over and cared for
Yeah.
in the midst of all
All
of the
this.
chaos and
Yeah.
catastrophe, and that the comfort that it offers is given to us in a way that resonates with us, that this is true. It is
Yeah.
tremendously stabilizing and comforting. And it helps, it can really help stabilize us psychologically with what we're facing right now.
Definitely, and I
Definitely.
think
And I
that's
think
one of
that's
the
one of the
reasons why
reasons why.
a lot of people are turning, because I mean they don't find the answers in any of the other places that we talked about. So like we're saying, it's on the fringe, or in the on the on the frontier, of this. And one of the things that I also want to point out, and that the Urantia Book does not replace your faith; it augments it. It's not that, okay, so throw away your God. No, no, no. Godliness, as we always have said, is a personal relationship with you. I mean, everybody has their own personal relationship. You do not. I mean, it's that is a given. So we're not substituting anybody, and there's no boogeyman, there's no hook, there's no catch, there's no, oh, you have to do this, or in order to get into heaven you have to give us our money or give us our that, or that. What I like about the organization, and I'm telling you my experience when I came in 26 years ago. I mean, I just replied, the business reply mail thing, with my information. Somebody said, okay, if you want to, I mean, there's readers in Mexico, if you want to share. I mean, they're going to meet in this library, bookstore, sorry. They're going to give a presentation. And I said, I sure, I'll go. And I found people, and that was pretty nice. I found people, and we started talking about it in a more of a experience and academic way, instead of an ecclesiastical dogmatic, and there's a ritual and everything. And that's the whole thing about the Urantia Book. It's there's a foundation that does the translations, publishes it, distributes it, and then there's many, many organizations of readers, such as the Center for Unity, which is the one that sponsors this podcast, that we want to share, and we know each other. That's how I got to meet Don, and we talk about this, and we share this information, because of course it uplifts you, and it makes you understand God much better, not just from reading it, but from sharing Him. And I think this is very important, what we're doing. that we're sharing God, and we're sharing this explanation, and through our conversations, I gain a lot. I think, Don, you gain a lot. And the important thing is that people that watch us can take all of this and really, augment their faith. And really, there's no catch, but really, your divine within coming out into the world.
Yeah, I just want to, in closing on my part, mention, piggyback off of something you said, which I think is vital, and that is there is no hook.
Exactly.
Exactly.
In other words, there is, as you read through this, there is not a formula that says you must do this, as if there is a cleaver hanging over your head. And if you don't believe this and take this as it is written right now, you are, headed for eternal damnation and all of that business. What it does do is invites us to explore. It's an invitation to explore. We have the capacity and the tools through our God-given imagination, through the Spirit of God that dwells within us, through the intellect that we have been given as an endowment of being immortal. And we're invited to put all these tools together to enhance and enlarge our spirituality and our cosmic understanding of the universe. And for me, that was so beautiful, especially after coming and being delivered from a very authoritarian religion that I grew up in.
Okay.
This was so, this was like spring water. Drinking spring
I can
water
relate.
in comparison to what I had before. So no one needs to feel fear of, okay, what am I getting into here? Do I have to go down to a synagogue and sign up, and a bunch of people are going to come to my door and start asking me questions? No, you are a
Or I
free.
have to give you my bank account.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
You're free to take this knowledge and reap the benefits from it, or do what you want with it, but at least be aware of it.
By the way, just wanted to point out, we have one of the resources at the Center for Unity is the Urantia Book Pod, where we had a podcast, AI-generated podcast that talks about, explains a little bit and discusses, and a lot of the readers are really enjoying it, because it's like you and I just discussing this, but going bit by bit from the each document, and they're really enjoying it. So anybody can, maybe you don't want to, it's not going to be your first contact to go and read the book right away. We have a lot of resources. We have Discovered Jesus, everything that we talked about, the story of Jesus' life in Jesus. We have it, every detail, and you can study it on your own. Every resource you can find here in our link tree. We have the hyperlink here, so go there. Please find all of this and use it. I mean, this is and it's free of charge. That's the beauty about this. Like we said, there's no catch. So please enjoy this. And Don, it's been a pleasure. I mean, time flies when I'm conversing with you. So any closing remarks apart from this?
No, I just am happy to be able to participate in putting this information out, and I appreciate the Center for Unity for making this a subject for conversation. I hope that people who are not Urantia Book readers who may happen to peruse this video will have found enough incentive to investigate this beautiful book that's been given to us.
Definitely. Thank you. Well, thanks, Don. With that, we'll close. And I want to thank all our audience for being here. Remember to subscribe, hit the notification to know when we're coming up with. I mean, it's basically weekly that we come out with segments from the show. And if you like this, also, and tell people about it. It's always important to hear from you that if there was a bunch of interesting folks talking about interesting things. Till next time, I'm Santiago Kneeland. This is the Divine Within. Take care and carpe diem. On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey. you.